I'm going to talk to you today about how can you use EventStorming as a cooperative game, and let's see that. The story actually might start 9 years ago in Chile. Maybe you already heard the story. There were 33 miners trapped underground, and because the mine they were in collapsed, and it was kind of a tremendous effort of people and coordination of experts to rescue them, because there was no way out and they had no access to light, oxygen, food, and so on. And that would be a fantastic way to start my talk, except that this is not the way I started my talk, but this is exactly the beginning of Amy Edmondson TED Talk, which I absolutely suggest you to watch, because she's telling the story about how a few group of expert engineers, psychologists, doctors, and whoever could give a contribution managed to cooperate to save those miners. But this is not my talk, and this is Amy's talk, and it's really good. But it gave me pretty good ideas, because hey, this really looked like the problem I'm facing, because I'm facing a different problem. Now let's have a look to what is our problem in software design. What about us? So the problem setting for us is basically, for the topic of this talk, assuming that we actually run a big picture EventStorming already. How many people here heard about EventStorming? Oh, wow, well, that's a lot more than I expected. How many people actually were in a room as messy as this one? Okay. Well, you're tidier than I am. This is kind of a real-world complexity. This is actually a conference organization, slightly simplified. So for the organizer, this is more or less how messy it can get. So chapeau to the organizers, because this work is really complex. But in terms of setting the stage for the problem that we will be facing, we're actually getting into the day after. So we assume that a few things in this checklist have been completed. We invited the right people. We explored the whole business end to end, whatever that means. Like every single thing that could be an event happening in the system gets mapped with an orange stick, on the wall with the verb the past tense. We visualize the involved people and the involved system, all the surrounding systems. Like for a conference organization, might be the venue, the catering, the ticketing, but the taxi organization, and everything else that could be a constraint or a success factor in the business. We validated the storytelling together. We explore opportunity for delivering more value, reducing frictions, and we explore opportunities for improving the system for the next iteration. And finally, we identify the most compelling problem in the system. That's all the stuff that could be done during a one-day big picture EventStorming. But I'm talking about the second day. So this is done, and this is more or less what you're going to see, like a structure of events, systems, and people, and all the learning that happens when you try to linearize, to visualize the story, which is the result of multiple storytelling. In this mess, in the mess that I just shown, actually what we see, what I try to see, is just this one. Just like, okay, this continuous flow of orange sticky notes is actually a validated business narrative with one main problem, which is the most likely candidate to be the bottleneck in your system. I mean, it's not a scientific measurement. It's much more like political consensus around the problem. But this is the end of the official day. Let's meet tomorrow to find a solution to that problem. And we all agree about this is the most important problem. There's another outcome of this workshop, which is something more related to software people. If you are into domain-driven design, or also if you're into microservices now, it's getting kind of compelling to get a peek in the domain-driven design world, mostly for the idea of bounded context. So in an end-to-end flow, you don't have a single software model. You will have many of them, but the whole community is puzzled about how do I extract bounded context. And turns out that running a big picture workshop gives a lot of extra hints about how to chop the problem into smaller models, into subsystems. And it has a lot to do with passing responsibilities with funding boundaries in the system, having different people responsible for different areas, and different independent flows along the way. A lot of stuff that you can see, not looking at the diagram, but looking at how people do behave, or what is their body language, and a lot of signals that happen during the day. So this is, as software people, our homework after the workshop ends. But here we are, the morning after. And in the morning after, we can have a few assumptions ready, like we are going to be working on the most compelling problem. I mean, we're not working on something which is not worth our inspection, which is not worth even scheduling the meeting. The second thing is the problem has a solution in the software world. Like in some big picture workshop, we might end up finding that this solution is nowhere in the software world. It might be in marketing. It might be in our culture is completely messed up. We are in the wrong place. We've been doing everything wrong. Or we need to get rid of our boss, and many other things. Like you cannot cooperate if there are personal issues. So I'm excluding this part, which is still possible. And we are in a place where designing software and designing processes, or designing processes held by software, might be part of the solution. The other ingredient is just like the key experts are going to be available. So is a single facilitated workshop that involves software people, business people, user experience designer, and service designer. What is the scope? The scope might be, I actually really hate talking about epics or features because every single company has their own interpretation and turns out into a mess. But what you want to have in your exploration, it sounds like there's a lot of preconditions. So if we need to redesign how do we sell tickets for a conference, the precondition might be that, well, maybe the lineup has been announced, or maybe not if you're running very, very early bird. And this is the path to buy the ticket. And at the end, what we're going to have is, well, this might be the outcome, like all the possible things that happen at the end. And the green thing is going to be the read model, what the visible outcome for a user. The other part of the problem setting is actually this one. We are dealing with a hard problem, especially if what we identified as a bottleneck in the organization already has a software solution. So there's a little bit of a loophole here. If there is already software, and this is now the bottleneck of the organization, it means like software people already tried to make a solution and didn't work. So we are in a place where we need to try alternative solution, and this is part of the game. Okay, now what? Let's get into action. The thing is, the big picture exploration worked okay, and I could facilitate with more than 30 people if necessary, because I'm not looking for consensus. I'm looking for a snapshot of the current disagreements along the way. So everything is fine, but reaching for agreement, that's a completely different job. And this is where the ideas from Amy Edmondson actually turn out really interesting. Because the challenge turns out really, really similar. Like, how do I get specialists with different backgrounds cooperate towards a common goal? And one of the ideas that was interesting was the fact that you couldn't have a real leadership. Actually, it was a kind of dynamic leadership. Like, problem number one is to give oxygen. Okay, so maybe the thing that we need to do is drill a hole to let the oxygen pass, and for that, you need a geologist or an engineer. That's the thing. After you solve that problem with the oxygen, okay, now we can also talk with the people so that the next person in charge becomes a psychologist. And the team is quickly shifting from one leadership to another one. There is no clear leader here. And so how can I make it happen in a software design scenario? So the first idea might be something like, yeah, the escape room. I lock you in the room too. You cannot get out till you find a solution. Turns out this is not really a workable solution. And the main distinctive factor is the fact like, well, people were cooperating because they were actually saving lives. So there was a compelling reason to get rid of some of their habits and status and all this stuff. And I didn't have it. I mean, I'm actually happy that I'm not working on life-saving situation. I might be happy sometimes to help in this area, but for software design, well, if the way to solve the problem is to start a software project, it's not very something that happens tomorrow. So the idea number 2 is actually get into games, more specifically collaborative games. And it's not a very original idea too. That's something that was actually in my head from the very beginning. How many people here know about this book, Agile Software Development from Alistair Cockburn, the Cooperative game? 1, 2, 3. That's actually little. That was one of the first books ever published about Agile software development. That was my top reading in 2001 and actually influenced me a lot. A lot of great ideas in here, like information radiators. Was the first one mentioned in the Shuhari. I don't even know if this was a good idea. But the idea of cooperative game, the idea of having different professionals trying to solve a puzzle, each one given a little contribution, actually really stuck. Okay, so if I treat it as a game, how do I make it happen? Well, I need to design the rules. And I also find out that this is exactly my strategy when I'm consulting, when I try to help companies in design their own processes and software. I really feel like I'm playing a game. Give me the goals, and that we will discover in the goals all along the way, but the goal is to solve a puzzle. And these are the rules of the game for the software modeling. 1, every path should be completed. So we're going to make sure that when an action starts, well, it's got to go to an end. The color grammar should be respected, every stakeholder should be reasonably happy, and every hotspot should be addressed. Let's have a look what I mean by this. Every path should be completed. In practice, we look something like that. So you remember the original picture. The original picture was a lot of oranges all the way and very messy. This is a little bit more and more structured. You could see some symmetry between orange, lilac, blue, pink, orange, lilac, blue, pink. You can see some, well, where is it? Go. No, not even trying. You can see some yellow things here, users, and you can see that there is a more sophisticated language going on here, something like a repeatable structure, and yeah, multiple branches in this flow. And the outcome, the end states, we actually visualize them. Reasonably happy. Reasonably happy because in this specific scenario we were dealing with cancellation, so nobody can be perfectly happy, but the best possible state given the circumstances. That was the thing. So talking about color grammar, this is the definition of the color grammar for the process modeling, which is basically humans making decisions based on a real-world experience. Wow, everybody's talking to me about this conference, which is great. And read model, which is the information visible to the user, maybe also highlighted with a wireframe, with the sketch. But this information, if the goal is I want to learn something about Agile, what the information that I need to be visualized on the screen to make my decision would be like the days, the speakers, the tracks, the price, and maybe even my availability. That might be on the real world, but yeah, that might be the topic to go there. Then the command might be something like, yes, buy my ticket, reserve my ticket. That will go into a ticketing system. We'll end up with a ticket purchase, and then will be displayed in a read model for somebody else. And the lilac policy on top would be something like reactive logic, like whenever a given event is happening, whenever a ticket is sold, well, our policy is to send a welcome message, maybe that goes on another screen. So how does it look? On a surface, we'll end up like something like this, building this sequentially. The other thing which is weird is the fact that we are using this color puzzle thinking. That is the actual grammar, linearized. And it's actually disappointing for some because whenever I get into action, I say like, no, forget about command, system, domain event, and policies. These concepts are really kind of weird to understand it the first time. You need to think something simpler, like after the blue, there's going to be a pink. After the pink, there's going to be an orange. After the orange, there's got to be a lilac. It's just like you need to be 4 years old as a thinker to solve that, not an experienced software developer. And then I get questions like this. Do we always need a policy? And yes, because it's my game and my rules. Why do I care about policy? is because in the shape of the software, in the shape of the processes, the policies are getting interesting, like the place where everybody is lying. Is actually the policies, the reactive logic, that whenever this happens, we do this, is the part of domain knowledge that changes more frequently. Companies grow bigger, people change, people make different decisions based on different circumstances. What you thought was real was not actually established. And well, that's actually great, because we are agile people. We don't expect software to be completely based on fixed requirements, but at the same time, accepting change is costly. So we would like to, if you can isolate the places where change is happening more likely, that's a good advantage. So that's a place. Policies are where the change is happening. Policies are where people are lying to you or telling not the whole truth in a first shot. And as software people, we know this. Ambiguity does not compile. And it can be uncodified rules, and or something more specific, or this interpretation, or the boss told me to do this, but this is what I do in the meanwhile. Instead, in general, I'm not going for a one-to-one mapping between the diagram or the modeling surface and the code. I'm actually trying to shape the conversation, try to make sure people are telling the whole truth and we can visualize everything. If you're into software, if you're a little bit into domain-driven design, or if you read my original article, the question might be like, yeah, what about the aggregate? It was nothing yellow in the so-called picture that explains everything. And since we are in the gaming metaphor, I have a solution for that. Well, the aggregates get in the expansion set of the rules of the game. And which means like we still have the rules up to number 4, but aggregate should be coherent with a little bit of a twist. So the aggregate goes exactly into the same picture as an alternative to an external system. We get into the core puzzle thinking. So you might go into yellow aggregate if you're designing your software component, or go to an external system if you're using a third party. But and this is what is going to be the software inside the vision about the software. Sometimes I don't even call it the aggregate because I don't have the people that know what an aggregate is in the room. So maybe it's a state machine, maybe it's a component, maybe it's just a thing. And yes, and there's another little problem, like people actively trying to name them, that might go in the way. But there's another thing here that actually maps to what Amy Edmondson was saying, is the fact that in order to design aggregate, this is not a class diagram, not at all. And the same aggregate might actually be there, yes, there, and I can really control it, there as well. Or maybe, and this old policy might be the same one here. And it feels like we are looking for symmetries on the flow instead of a class diagram where we could have all the methods and command in the same place. And it actually feels fuzzy in some ways, but it actually is something that is needed. So I don't know what is the attitude here, but I've been doing EventStorming in a few countries, and especially in Germany, some people kind of freak out. I actually had pretty good workshop, but they freak out because they look for precise definition of what an aggregate is or what a command is. And I don't give them. I don't give precise definition intentionally, because I would like to have an engagement between people that have a fuzzy interpretation of concept instead of a precise notation that is going to be totally okay for one given specialist. So getting back to Amy's metaphor, my approach to this joint modeling session is exactly this one. Like every person should get rid of their guns at the saloon bar. So I know software people are really good in UML, BPMN, and other modeling technique, but it really doesn't matter if you need to talk with business stakeholders, or it really doesn't matter if you're working with user experience people. Well, user experience and service design are really good in customer journeys, but customer journeys doesn't really work if you're designing data-intensive process involving the software people. So we are really good in our notation in our territory, but I would say the actual outcome is this one. We need to give up something as individuals in order to succeed as a team. I was really good as a UML modeler. I stopped using UML because it was not supporting the conversation. My diagrams were too good. Nobody was giving me a negative feedback, and I didn't know if I was doing things right or wrong. Okay, with this one, the diagram is a surface with stickies and look like stupid enough so that everybody can comment and tell me it's wrong here. Talking about the happy stakeholders. Oh, well, that's something that's interesting, and actually a connection with the keynote from Jeff. We want to make everybody happy, and the thing is, we actually can visualize happiness, whatever this means. Like, we're trying to visualize the value in every step with little sticky notes, green or red, reddish, whatever. And the funny thing here is, the moment we start asking this conversation, we discover that the idea of value is not really clarified inside the organization. So the first thing that we see is money is the obvious one. Oh, this is where we create value. Somebody's paying for a ticket. Yeah, kind of boring. The other thing with money is just like it's a zero-sum currency. It's if I give you money, I have less money, you have more money, which is kind of less interesting. I know we are buying stuff on the internet, so there are transactions, and that's part of it, but money is not the only value at stake. There are some more interesting currencies that might emerge, and time is usually the second one. Or in the flow, we were really trying to minimize stress and anxiety. There was a scenario that really interesting to read in the healthcare, where delays between the moment a person took an exam and the moment they got the answer back were actually hurting people that were kind of killed by the stress and waiting for their results. So being quick was not money saving, but was actually life saving because of that. In our scenario, in some other companies, we actually discovered some other currencies that were happening along the flow, like the joy of doing good stuff, the reputation happening in a given moment, the satisfaction for a successful delivery, and stuff that we were not thinking about. It is interesting because one thing that I learned from Lean is just like you cannot optimize for more than one currency. And the obvious one is money, but for many successful business, money is a consequence, it's not a goal. So if somebody's telling you, well, our goal is to maximize value, or even worse, maximize value for stakeholders or shareholders, no, that's not the way to go. We took an experiment in our company, tried to optimize for happiness or good mood, and actually paid off really, really well. Now talking about game strategies, hotspots are addressed, but not now. So the main problem we're trying to model with a group of 4, 5, 10, maybe 15 people, a new process is you start with this illusion, like, oh yes, we're gonna do this and do all the steps. And we know we're making software, we know that is not the real story. The real story goes a little bit more like this. We will have branching happening all the time. And hotspots are places where you can visualize all the alternatives and make them visible, maybe in real time. So if you wanna have a tip, a winning strategy for not being stuck with the modeling is you're going to be swamped by branching, and visualize all the branches you're not taking. Like, try to deliver value, visualize the branches, move on, deliver quickly, provide feedback in real time, and then choose the next one. The summary of this approach is what I call rush to the goal. So go to a baseline as quickly as possible, mark alternative with a hotspot, try to find a stakeholder where you deliver value, then look at what you forgot along the way, start over from addressing one or more hotspots. Then, okay, if this is the game, what about our team? Is there anything like a special team? I mentioned competencies. In order to design good software product, I think we need the software people, for sure. We need the business coming from different departments, so their needs might actually be competing sometimes. We need user experience and service design. And yes, I mentioned this already, but this is about the notation and all this stuff. What about the attitudes? Actually, the attitude is kind of important. There's something that happened during the workshop, which is basically 3 stereotypes. the driller, maybe the one that you're more familiar with, just like, is the person drilling for alternatives? What if you have a ticket sold to a person, then on the same day another person with the same name buys the same ticket, and then one wants to cancel, and all these alternatives. What if a Meteor kills a server farm in the middle of a transaction? You want this person. You probably have this person in your team. Maybe you are this person in your team. But I would never leave this person alone. I would like to have something from the business telling this, well, you know, this flow is the 80% of the time. This is happening 10%. If we cover this, we are probably okay. I will take care of the rest here. And at the same time, those two people alone might not do a good job. I need the empathic. I need the person taking care about emotions and feeling along the way. You know, at this step, somebody might be really, really upset because we get a warning message, which is making them feel like have I really accomplished something. I need this. I need this three personality in order to deliver something. I need diversity in order to perform as a team. In terms of execution, strategic and complex move, this is a little bit more up to you. So I wanted to be in a position where I designed a game, but I'm not the best player. I mean, the person that invented tennis was not the winner of every tennis tournament around the world. So we need to make sure that the rules are set in a given way. So talking about strategies, well, that is the starting point, but I hope and I bet that there's going to be something more interesting than my starting point. So idea number one might be to start from the beginning. Idea number two might be to start from the end. So you visualize the outcomes, and then you get into reverse narrative and just move backwards, try to build something. It works a little bit better in terms of lean, but it's a little bit more demanding in terms of energy. The final approach is to storm with events, which is the problem that if you start like this, you're probably going to get a lot of events really, really quickly. So you got to make sure you're time boxing, because if you start with oranges, you will get a lot of oranges, and then connecting the dots will take a long time. So this is kind of the summary of the different strategies. Like in chess, you can start in one way, but you might have variation. So the point on me is just like that I end up using all of them, maybe in the same workshop, and that might be just the starting point. Final topic is how to deal with the team. So the problem here is just like in software design. This is a picture taken from a discussion between two software architects, and the point is, when we have two good ideas, this fight would not end easily. If you have one good idea, one bad idea, it finishes in seconds. But with two ideas, you get into this area. And so they discuss. We're not really good in discussing. So again, it might be solution number one, everybody on the problem together. Mob, one on the problem, everybody providing feedback, then or split and merge. I have one more slide. Okay, sorry. So, which is not exactly one, but it's short. So the biggest challenge is, if this is working, like I wanted just to be honest, like this looks like it's working perfectly. Not exactly. Once I have everybody in the room, yes, it can work pretty well. But in projects, we found out that our biggest enemy was actually calendar or company boundaries. Like we could be one day everybody in the same room, and then we spread around, and we might even run something similar because new people joined the team and all this stuff. So the idea of maximum optimization was not really working perfectly if the team and the whole plan was not set up in this way. And still local disciplines need deliverables, and that might be in the way. So I will actually go to the final thing, because that was the most important thing for me. Like if we need to get outcome, a good result from this exploration, that's my philosophy and the final goal. We need to give up something as individuals in order to succeed as a team. And then use it as a game, and that's the way so that we can have this good interaction happening. And when it happens, it's actually pretty fun. So, yeah, that's it.